It would cause such surprise, it would make all of their minds electric. How could anyone tell them that some things are not what they see?
The unnoticed art form, the part of the production you aren't supposed to notice. Editing is the combination of shots to create a sequence that conveys an emotion or idea. Today anyone can be an editor, even me. Computer software allows editing to be done on a smartphone, and with the rise of video sharing platforms like YouTube, cinematography and editing has given people a new way to be creative. The ease of editing today is something you can take for granted, but it was a long road to get here from the first motion pictures. 1895, Paris, where our story starts, 25 years after the Third Republic of France is established. In the Grand Café on Boulevard des Capucines, the first motion pictures were projected in front of an amazed audience. The invention they used was called a cinematograph. It had been developed by the Lumiere brothers, Auguste and Louis. Born in 1862 and 1864, the brothers were marvels of science at a young age. An interest in photography was instilled at a young age too. They went on to be successful in the production of photographic plates and ultimately developing the cinematograph from Edison's kinetoscope. The first films were not cinematic masterpieces. They were just recordings of workers leaving their factory, but the fact that you could now record reality was astounding to people. One man to witness this spectacle was Georges Méliès, a theatre owner and magician. He could see that the Lumiere brothers had only just touched the surface of what film was capable of. With his magician's intuition, Méliès developed camera and editing techniques that people still use today. These are called in-camera effects. In fact, he discovered you could alter the film to cut to a different time, or what we would now call a cut, by accident, when his wind-up camera jammed. His films could be seen as theatre pieces. They had extravagant sets and storylines, like his most famous film, Les Voyages dans la Lune. He developed such things as the black fade-out, overlapping dissolves, and stop-motion photography. All of these techniques are used for Academy Award-winning productions, and all are available on my editing software too. These are my own use of the transitions brought in when cinema was just starting. A simple cut is used to go from one view to another, or to change setting or time. Cutting in action is predominantly used in action films, as it keeps fight and chase scenes looking visually dynamic, and entices the audience. The dissolve is used to show passage of time or change of setting, or there is a strong visual link between the two joining shots. And back to history now. As all pioneers have built on things before them, a new man and his ideas would develop the language of cinema further. Someone who developed editing into a form that we, a modern audience, would recognise is a man named D.W. Griffiths. Griffiths developed a style of editing that we would call today as continuity editing, where the editor tries to maintain a space and time through the duration of the sequence. He also transformed the single-shot medium of filming into a multiple camera setup. He also, without intending to, sparked a whole new film revolution over in the USSR, with the release of his movie Intolerance in 1916. Vladimir Lenin loved the production and allowed it to be shown in the USSR, which gave Russian film student and teacher Lev Kuleshov the chance to explore and analyse the production. With the deep, intense analysis of the film, they documented the Kuleshov effect, a psychological phenomenon where a three-shot sequence can be manipulated to create a whole new meaning. As you can see, the implied meaning for each example changes when the middle shot is changed, At first, the man is unassuming to the audience. He is just staring at food. Then, to the audience in the second example, he appears to be grief-stricken. And finally, in the last example, he appears to be lusting over a young woman. Back to overseas, with the invention of the moviola in 1924, which was capable of viewing the film, editing could become so much easier. It used to be you had to physically cut and inspect the films in order to edit. Now, editing could develop into an art form. In 1934, the first Academy Award for editing was awarded to Conrad A. Nervig, 10 years after the invention of the moviola. Silent films had been a medium for entertainment for years. They'd hit an aesthetical peak and more people went to see them in droves. Silent film stars were made icons of their time, Charlie Chaplin and Greta Garbo to name a few. Silent films were what people wanted. In some cinemas they would have an orator or a band play while the film showed. People enjoyed watching silent movies. The first motion picture with sound was brought to audiences in 1927 with The Jazz Singer, where audience got their first look at what would be known as talkies. The sound recording technique included a vitaphone, a machine that had film strips and phonographs linked together. The machine was static and loud. Even the marvel of sound cinema didn't change the cinema format immediately. Even after major production studios created their own sound films, sound theatres still grew slowly, while silent theatres were more rapidly built. Movies were produced in two forms, sound and silent. Many rejected the idea, but silent movies began to be a less viable means of productions, as eventually people wanted to see more movies with synchronised sound and real dialogue. The golden age of Hollywood was here, and with sound now a commercially available part of a production, films could be more intricate and detailed. Movie genres began to arise: action, romance, political and comedy, to name a few. New film stars arose: Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, Grace Kelly and Elizabeth Taylor, stars that are still known to this day. As time passed, the format of editing stayed the same. Every technique and every theory had been applied to the art, but still, new and great movies were still made. Post-war America brought about societal changes that shifted the way people lived. America had an economic boom which made people spend money on leisurely activities and also buy home televisions. With television, people went to the cinema less, so production companies started to make movies that were made for television. Editing still hadn't changed. The moviola was still an industry standard in Hollywood. It had upgraded to incorporate sound and had multiple picture heads for multi-camera setups. Enter the Ampex and EECO. These new editing flatbeds used time codes and could speed through film. These editing machines didn't become popular in the US until the 1960s. The systems were very popular amongst editors for their flexibility and simplistic setup. Not until 1971, the first computerized non-linear editing emerged with the CMX 600. These editing softwares had limited video and audio capabilities, but as computers became more efficient and more capable, so did the process. After the progress again plateaued, editors began to favour non-linear methods of editing, as with new technology it became so simple. Now, as we draw closer to today, we can start to see how editing has become the medium it has. In 1991, the world was introduced to editing software by EMC and Avid, which are more capable than ever, only still accessible by filmmakers and production companies. When multi-core CPUs were introduced into commercially available computers, this made editing something people could do in their own homes. Now, editing today is simpler than ever, and more accessible too. Regular people started to learn how to edit at home, and with the rise of video sharing platforms like YouTube, people had a place to show their creativity online. To find out more about the life of an editor today, I went to Pinewood Studios to interview Gemma, who was an editor for a production company stationed there.
So do you want me to talk into the lens or
To me.
to you?
Yeah.
Right, so it's off.
Okay, so it just seems a bit more natural, I guess. How did you break into the production business as an editor?
It was completely by accident. So I'm a TV and radio presenter by trade, and it's really important for me to be able to edit my own content, to put it out into social media, to different platforms, or if I'm going for a job, I need to be able to make demo tapes.
What skills and attribute would you say make a good editor?
Definitely creativity and just have that edge. I think you have to be so detailed and have passion. Do you know what, when we watch films or any TV programmes, usually the last person to be thanked is the editor. Although we've all enjoyed what they've watched, it can at times be quite a thankless and frustrating job.
Yeah. How much creative input do you feel like you have as an editor?
I'm very lucky in my role personally, whether it's at TV Training Academy where I'm editing someone's show reel, or if I'm editing my own content, I have as much or as little input that I want to put. I think if I was working with someone, that might be a little bit different.
What would you say is a regular day as an editor?
Well, it can be completely different. Any of the editors that we have working at TV Training, it's pretty much the same every day because it's show reels, but they have to be able to treat that person as an individual and know what makes them stand out, their USP. And that can be quite difficult for an editor when they've not met that presenter. So I have to discuss with our editors what would make that person stand out. The days for our editors and for myself is pretty much, when it comes to editing, it's the same every day.
How do you see editing developing in the future?
I think it's so important that everyone knows how to edit. I think the way social media is going and how YouTube is going, every business, every person is going to have YouTube channels if they're looking to progress in any career. So I think it's really important that people have at least a basic level of editing, because I think, the future it is visual.
Again, as technology and society have changed and sophisticated, as too has the art and method of editing. Every pioneer has taken on from what others had done before them and developed it into a new age.